As you can see, it's a work in progress.
The fallout from this decision has been nothing short of explosive for a couple that centered their entire identity around reality television fame, both for them personally and for the vast and deeply divided fan base that had witnessed their dramatic ascent, chaotic peak, and ultimately humiliating decline. And when the cameras finally stopped rolling and TLC officially severed ties with Andre Castrovet and Elizabeth Pothast, the reverberations were immediate and severe, not only because of the loss of income and visibility that came with being cut off from one of the most influential reality franchises on the planet, but also because of the psychological and reputational blow to two individuals who had, for years, defined themselves not as private citizens but as personalities shaped for the consumption of millions. According to multiple insiders close to the couple, Andre did not take the decision quietly or gracefully, instead raging behind closed doors, furious that the network had dared to exile him after, in his mind, exploiting his presence and his temper for ratings season after season. He accused TLC of betrayal, manipulation, and outright fabrication, claiming that he had been deliberately cast as a villain in order to maximize drama while producers suppressed his more sympathetic moments, and he reportedly told friends and confidants that the network had not only destroyed his public reputation but had also irreparably damaged his family's personal relationships by encouraging and manufacturing conflicts for the cameras. True to his combative personality, Andre vowed to expose TLC for what he saw as lies, exploitation, and unethical manipulation of reality, floating threats of tell-all podcasts, YouTube exposés, and interviews where he would reveal the so-called dark side of reality television, though as of yet none of those plans have materialized into something capable of rivaling the global reach of TLC's broadcast machine. Elizabeth, by contrast, responded with heartbreak, shock, and visible grief. For someone who had grown up with cameras documenting her family, who had become recognizable as a household face through the franchise, and who had long used TLC as both a career path and a platform for fame, fashion, lifestyle branding, and social media growth, being cut off felt like a devastating exile, a loss of both livelihood and identity. Sources close to her described days of tears, sleepless nights, and repeated private attempts to negotiate with producers, pleading for another chance, suggesting rebranded storylines, or asking if the couple could be placed in spin-offs where they might redeem their image, but those overtures were met with a firm refusal, as the network had already reached its breaking point. Then came the fallout with the larger Pothast family, a clan that had themselves become minor celebrities due to their constant feuds, awkward business ventures, and volatile public behavior, and whose presence on the show was tethered directly to Andre and Elizabeth's storyline. With the banishment of the couple came the erasure of the wider family's platform, and suddenly the brothers and sisters who had relished the spotlight found themselves cut off from the lucrative drama pipeline that had made them tabloid names. Chuck Pothast, Elizabeth's father, who had somehow become both an awkwardly endearing and oft-criticized figure during the family's run, reportedly told friends that even he knew this was inevitable, admitting that the never-ending arguments, drunken altercations, and violent threats had reached a saturation point that the network could no longer manage. Charlie Pothast, infamous for his drunken fights and belligerence, allegedly gloated over the decision, telling acquaintances that TLC had finally realized what he always claimed, that Andre was a toxic liability dragging the family down, and while he may have celebrated, other siblings quietly seethed, some blaming Andre for destroying what could have been years of continued reality TV paychecks, while others accepted, perhaps grudgingly, that the ban was unavoidable given the trail of chaos left behind. The so-called podcast family circus, as fans derisively dubbed them, had reached the logical conclusion of their reality arc: collapse, exile, and silence once the cameras no longer rolled to capture the dysfunction. For fans, the response was swift, polarizing, and passionate. When rumors of the ban first began to circulate, many longtime viewers refused to believe them, pointing out that TLC had ignored complaints for years, continuing to feature Andre and Elizabeth despite repeated social media backlashes and trending hashtags like #NoMorePodcasts, and they assumed that the network would simply spin the controversy into yet another season of melodrama. But as months passed, and as Andre and Elizabeth were conspicuously absent from promotional teasers, spin-offs, reunion specials, and crossover appearances, the truth became impossible to deny, and social media erupted in collective celebration. Reddit threads, Facebook fan groups, and Twitter timelines filled with triumphant posts declaring finally and good riddance, framing the decision as long overdue housecleaning by a network that had allowed toxicity to fester unchecked for too long. Many fans argued that Andre's aggression and Elizabeth's enabling behavior had crossed the line from entertaining drama into genuinely uncomfortable toxicity, transforming the show from guilty pleasure escapism into something that felt exploitative and disturbing. Some commentators even went so far as to frame the ban as TLC's tacit acknowledgement that the brand had been endangered by pushing too hard on chaos, and that removing the couple was necessary damage control to preserve the future of the franchise. Still, not everyone applauded. A smaller but vocal faction of the fanbase admitted that they would miss the chaos, pointing out that Andre and Elizabeth had, for better or worse, provided some of the most unforgettable moments in the show's history: drunken brawls at weddings, screaming matches at family dinners, tense confrontations that spilled into physical altercations, and episodes that became instant social media fodder. They argued that while the couple may have been polarizing, they were never boring, and without them the series risked losing the volatile edge that differentiated it from other relationship-based reality shows. This debate, whether the franchise should prioritize stability and relatability or lean into chaos and dysfunction, revealed a deeper tension within reality TV itself, one that producers, fans, and critics alike have wrestled with since the genre exploded in popularity. The bigger question now, and one that continues to hang over both the fanbase and the couple themselves, is what happens next. Deprived of TLC's vast platform, Andre and Elizabeth are scrambling to reinvent themselves, and insiders say they are already. 1. From the moment Andre Castrovet and Elizabeth Pothast made their debut on 90 Day Fiancé, they immediately became one of the most polarizing couples in the history of the franchise. And while on the surface their storyline seemed like the typical cultural clash love affair that has fueled TLC's juggernaut of a series for nearly a decade, the deeper truth, one only insiders, producers, and the most observant fans could sense, was that this couple was less about the universal struggles of love across borders and more about a powder keg of control, manipulation, defiance, and dysfunction that eventually became so combustible that TLC had no choice but to take the rare and shocking step of banning them from the network for life, a fate that very few reality stars ever face because the network typically prefers to exploit controversy rather than extinguish it. But in the case of Andre and Elizabeth, the flames were simply too dangerous to allow to burn any longer, and their final downfall is not just a scandal for the franchise but a cautionary tale for the entire reality TV industry. To understand how they got to this point, we need to rewind to their origins, because Elizabeth, affectionately called Libby by her family and fanbase, was portrayed initially as the sweet, somewhat naive youngest daughter of the loud and money-entangled Pothast family of Florida, while Andre was introduced as the strong-willed, rough-around-the-edges Moldovan immigrant whose fiery temper and domineering attitude clashed instantly with his American in-laws, creating a dynamic that TLC recognized as ratings gold. At first, the formula worked exactly as planned. Chuck, Elizabeth's father, and her siblings provided a skeptical Greek chorus, questioning Andre's motives, his work ethic, and his ability to provide, while Andre bristled at every criticism, seeing it not as protective concern but as direct challenges to his masculinity and authority, which only fueled his aggressive need to dominate situations, often resulting in blow-ups so intense that dinners devolved into shouting matches and weddings teetered on the edge of physical brawls, with Elizabeth caught in the middle, loyally siding with her husband even as viewers begged her to see what they saw, a man who appeared arrogant, controlling, and sometimes emotionally cruel. But what viewers did not know was that the dysfunction we saw on screen was just the tip of the iceberg, because behind the scenes, according to multiple crew members and producers who later confided to insiders, Andre's volatile behavior extended far beyond the family dinner table and spilled into his working relationship with the very people trying to film his story, turning what should have been a controlled, if chaotic, environment into a nightmare of unpredictability where filming days were delayed, budgets ballooned, and morale on set plummeted because Andre seemed incapable of separating reality from reality TV, constantly accusing producers of making him look bad even though his own actions were more damning than any edit could be. Insiders recall moments where he sang altogether if he didn't like the storyline, or demanded last-minute script changes that were impossible to accommodate, with one infamous incident involving him locking himself in a car and refusing to come out until producers agreed to delete a segment where he was depicted as unemployed and bickering with Libby about money, a move that cost TLC thousands in delays and cemented his reputation as one of the most difficult cast members to ever work with. Elizabeth, for her part, was not the fiery aggressor her husband was, but insiders say she was complicit, frequently siding with him against the crew, supporting his refusals, and sometimes adding fuel to the fire by making her own demands, such as refusing to shoot with her siblings unless Andre signed off first or pushing for specific edits that portrayed them more sympathetically, actions that infuriated executives who saw her transformation from a pliant cast member to a co-conspirator in Andre's rebellion. Meanwhile, the Pothast family chaos, which initially gave TLC some of the franchise's most unforgettable scenes, such as the drunken outburst by Elizabeth's brother Charlie at the Moldovan wedding where he shouted "Don't come to America and take our money," soon crossed a line from entertaining dysfunction to toxic spectacle, with physical fights nearly breaking out at multiple events and the tension so thick during family shoots that crew members later admitted they were nervous something truly violent would occur. Social media reflected this growing toxicity, with hashtags like #BanAndre and #RemoveElizabeth trending during episodes, online petitions garnering tens of thousands of signatures demanding TLC cut ties, and fan forums filled with posts accusing TLC of rewarding abusive dynamics for ratings while ignoring the genuine discomfort of viewers who no longer saw the segments as entertaining but rather as emotionally draining, hostile, and at times dangerous. Despite this backlash,